Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, continuing our position rankings heading into the 2024 NFL Draft. And we got an edge rusher group that, Dill, I think from a top-end talent standpoint, you have a loaded class and some sprinkled in depth in terms of different kind of pass rushers that do a lot of different things. Really excited to get into this one. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys. And many of the longtime listeners know how big of fans we are of evaluating these college prospects heading into the NFL draft. We have a blast every year covering the NFL draft. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And more importantly, would love to hear from you guys in the comment sections on how you guys are feeling about these prospects. And I think the beauty of the NFL draft is the discussion and how people agree, disagree. So whether you agree, disagree with some of our takes, would love to hear what you guys think in the comment section, some edge rushers that we might be sleeping on. Appreciate all the support you guys have shown the boys. And without further ado, let's get into this one. And Dill, I'm gonna give you the tee box here on Braden McGregor, checking in at number 10. How are we feeling about Braden here?
I mean, a really solid player. I think one of the big things is he's gotten better over the course of his career and started kind of slow, but you've really started to see him put it together. And again, doesn't have the freak athletic traits that I think you need to be a really elite pass rusher in the NFL, but is good at being disruptive. He's got long arms. He uses them well. He can push pockets and create havoc. And then against the run is where he really shines because he does have that strength and a little bit of that power to hold up and be really, really tough in that situation.
And that's like in my mind, when you're evaluating these edge rushers, like we're going to talk about a guy like Chop Robinson who just has insane twitch, insane get off and a first step. I think the discussion when you're evaluating some of these edge guys is how do they perform against the run? I think it's easy to gravitate to the guys that are stuffing the stat sheet with sacks and pass rush win rate. Braden McGregor, you talk about late day 2, early day 3, getting a solid rotational piece on that defensive line that's going to help defenses win on first and second down, stopping the run. That's Braden McGregor, a ton of length, knows how to deal with tackles and kind of keeping that outside shoulder free. One thing you can say about everyone on that Michigan defensive line, they play the run exceptionally well. They're extremely disciplined. They don't really give up leverage in any meaningful way. And a guy like Braden McGregor, with the length and power he has in his hands, I mean, he certainly can stand up tackles. And as a pass rusher, Dill, I thought this was his best year of college football, had a 15% pass rush win rate. And you said it best, right? A lot of his production comes from just going right through tackles. I'm going to use my length. I'm going to get my hands on you, and I'm just going to kind of collapse the pocket. Lacks a little bit of that burst and bend, but again, a guy that early day 3, late day 2 would be a very nice addition for a lot of NFL rosters. Now, going into our next guy here, Dill, Xavier Thomas. And I'll start with Xavier Thomas. A couple of the things that you don't love. One is the age. This is a guy that dealt with a ton of injuries throughout his career. Now, he came back to Clemson in 2023. I thought had his best season as a Clemson Tiger. He is a very, very good pass rusher. All the things that Braden McGregor maybe lacks in terms of that burst and bend, Xavier Thomas has. But again, not as good against the run as Braden McGregor is. And so you want a guy that third and longs, kind of a pass rush package. Hey, pin your ears back, go get the quarterback. I mean, Xavier Thomas, I think, could be that kind of guy in the NFL.
And the one thing he's got to work on in the pass rush department is just being able to chain together some moves, because it feels like at times he's got that power, and when he explodes into a tackle, he can put them on skates and win with that kind of technique, if you will, or that sort of athleticism. But again, he doesn't chain them together. You look at a Latu, you look at a Dallas Turner. Those guys go from move to move. They have that power. They can get in the guys. They can spin. They can go out, win outside, inside. It does feel like at times he gets caught up. If that power doesn't go, then the pass rush is kind of over. And again, if you're going to be that elite pass rusher, you need to develop more of that.
Which is that's the only thing that's a little concerning is Xavier Thomas has been around the block a couple times and hasn't been healthy. You would like to see a little bit more polish from him in the pass rush as well, which kind of makes you ask the question, is that ever going to happen in the NFL if it hasn't happened after 5 years at the college football level? Dill, going into 8, this is kind of your personal favorite. He's a twin, Gabriel Murphy from UCLA. I'll give you the tee box here.
I mean, a really versatile player. I think you saw him play on the inside. You saw him play on the outside. And one thing that really stands out to me is strength. I mean, just does a really good job. And for lacking a bit of that like elite length, as you kind of mentioned, does a good job of getting his hands on guys and pushing around in really good inside pass rusher. Again, similar to kind of what we've talked about with some of these other guys, doesn't have a ton of that athleticism on the edge, and he doesn't win a ton on the edge. But when you put him on the inside, and if you're kind of on those like later downs, those third and longs where you can squeeze him in there, I think he does do a really good job because he's quick, he's strong, and he does a good job of keeping guards' hands off him.
Gabriel Murphy he kind of gets overshadowed a little from Laiatu Latu. And you take a look at his numbers, an 18% pass rush win rate, 40 quarterback hurries. He does a phenomenal job getting right into tackles. And I think also brings a lot in the run game. And I look at Gabriel Murphy coming in at 8, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's a little bit of a riser. Now, some of the things that you have concerns is, I don't think, you said it best, he's disruptive. I don't know if he has those elite traits in terms of resulting that disruption into sack production. I don't think he's necessarily going to measure like an elite edge prospect as well. And so those are some of the concerns, but you watch the tape and it's easy to gravitate to a guy like Laiatu Latu, who is winning on almost every single rep in the pass rush. Gabriel Murphy on the other side is doing some really, really good things too. A lot of power in his hands. Coming in at 8, we'll see if he sticks at 8, because I could see him moving up in this process. Now, number 7, a guy that we're probably a little bit lower on than most of the NFL draft community, and that's Bralen Trice. A couple of things you love, right? Just an absolute powerful, powerful human being. He's very, very disruptive. Kind of just takes tackles and just forks lift them into the backfield. He has an extreme motor, which is something I love talking about with edge rushers as well. But when you talk about Bralen Trice, I mean, he just the burst and bend is not really there. He's a very limited athlete. I don't think he's going to test extremely well. And at that edge position, you want those premium athletes, those guys that are just more athletic than the tackles that are trying to block him. I'm not quite sure if Bralen Trice is that guy.
And I think part of the issue is when you see him play guys he just overpowers, he can be very, very dominant.
Agreed.
But when you can't test offensive linemen who are really good with multiple kind of avenues, I think it's really hard to win consistently against teams like Oregon. You just don't see him dominating the game really at all. And then so you kind of project him to the NFL. It's like, well, there's just like, he can't get it. He just doesn't get going on the edge. He doesn't have a ton of flexibility at all. In his avenue is to win inside. If he's not winning inside, he really doesn't win a ton. And that's where I think you get concerned. And again, will be a solid player because he's tough in the run. He's strong as an ox. But in terms of being like, if you're going to put him in that top 5 edge rusher unit, I think you got to be able to win a couple different ways.
I think you made a really good point. One of the things I was looking at my notes real quick. Bralen Trice dominated against not very good tackles. But when he went up against some better tackles, I think the Oregon game maybe comes to mind. You see a little bit less of those flashes. And I think you said it best. When he doesn't have that ability to just go right through tackles who have bad anchors, the production kind of goes by the wayside a little bit. So that's probably your biggest concern, is were you beating up on guys that were not very good tackles? Because you're going to see good tackles in the NFL.
And can you be able to hit those inside moves? He's got a good inside swim, but I don't see how you can hit an inside swim when a guy doesn't have to pass such a hard going out to the edge, because he just doesn't.
When he doesn't have the avenue to win with his power, that's when you see him kind of struggle. Number 6, kind of a fan favorite for both of us. Another guy that
story, frankly, too.
Yeah. But I think Darius Robinson has a little bit more athleticism. I think he's probably going to test a little bit better. And he's a first off the bus kind of guy. I mean, 6'5", 296. I don't know if he's quite 296. We'll see what he measures at the combine. This dude is a muscle factory. He has a ton of length in his arms, and he uses that length. That's one of the more important things that I look for is, all right, it's nice to talk about guys that have 35-inch arms. Are they using that length to win in their pass rush? Darius Robinson does. He wants to put his hands on tackles, use that speed to power, just kind of walk them right into the backfield. I think he is a very fluid athlete for his size. I don't think he has that kind of elite burst and bend, and again, more of a heavy-handed guy, but I like it more than Bralen Trice, hence Darius Robinson coming up just a little bit over Bralen Trice.
Yeah, and you're looking at two guys who are very similar. It's just Darius Robinson is probably 20 pounds heavier and probably an inch or two taller with longer arms. So it's like you kind of look at guys
a little bit more athletic, in my opinion.
And that's like for sure. But again, a similar story where you look at him and why he's maybe not higher on the list. It's like I go back to that Kansas State game. I don't know if any of you rabid college fans watch, but like Cooper Beebe was the guard for Kansas State, kicked out to play right tackle for a few plays. And you kind of saw when Darius Robinson couldn't win with his power and just being able to overmatch physically the tackles, you kind of see him start to struggle. And again, I think that Darius Robinson is going to be really good at what he does. I think he's going to be an elite run defender, probably as good as I've seen in this draft, possibly. And then he's still going to be able to, I think, collapse pockets and be disruptive. But I think it goes back to that choice. When you can't win with being able to put pressure with guys on the edge, I think it's really hard to be a consistent edge rush winner. I think he's going to be more of an inside pass rusher in a run stopping a defensive lineman.
And you'll see us kind of value, and it's not necessarily us not valuing the edge rushers that can play good against the run, because we have a guy like Braden McGregor who's probably not in many people's top 10 as a top 10 prospect because of what he can do in the run. But when you're evaluating these edge rushers, you're trying to figure out, like, what edge rushers are we going to take with premium draft capital? You want the guys that have those elite traits to get after the quarterback and be productive in the sack department. And I think this list starts with a guy like Adisa Isaac, right? Gives up a little bit of size on guys like Braylon Trice and Darius Robinson. We're going to talk about two Penn State edge rushers, Adisa Isaac and Chop Robinson, probably two of the best first steps that you see in the class. I mean, Adisa Isaac, next level first step. I have good run defender. I think good run defender for his size, and we'll have that conversation about Penn State and what these edge rushers do, because it doesn't seem like they're taught the same thing as those Michigan edge defenders in terms of they just want penetration. They want a lot of penetration, and this Isaac certainly gives that to you as an edge rusher.
And when you talk about run defense, like, makes a lot of like those highlight reel plays, gets TFLs, I feel like is disruptive in that way. Yeah. And when you talk about his edge, like run defense, I guess you could say, it does what you do wonder, like, what the discipline is. And again, what they're wanting them to do at Penn State, because they are upfield players. Everyone on Penn State rushes really hard upfield. And you do see them, at least from an outside observer, it feels like sometimes they're out of position to an extent. There are big creases at times. But again, that might be exactly what Penn State wants, because they want those negative plays. They want hyper aggression, and he's good at that. But again, I think the run play, really good. And to me, I don't think you've seen the pass rush totally develop into what it could be. I think he's a better athlete than maybe what he's shown. I felt like he won a lot inside because he was quick or lightning quick, I should say, getting in. But I do want to see him develop more of an arsenal. That's
kind of what I have, is like, maybe kind of like when you see him win, it's either the burst and bend around the outside. It's winning with quickness. It's winning because I'm a better athlete than the tackle that's trying to block me. You want to see him develop some of that more hand usage. And again, you'll bet on that. Like, when you get him into the NFL, like, he's got the traits to be an elite pass rusher. Teach him how to use that length. Teach him how to use his hands. And I think you're looking at a very, very premier edge rusher. One other thing that
all the tools. I mean, he's such a good athlete.
One other thing I have in my notes is, I mean, he's a guy that gets a lot of tackles for loss. His average depth of tackle is 0.6 yards. And you look at, like, what you want in the modern NFL, you want to create those negative plays. You want to keep teams off schedule. And Adisa Isaac is a guy that gets in the backfield. He's very good at closing the gap in terms of ball carries, whether it's a quarterback or running back. I'm very interested in how he tests, because I think he's going to test well, and I think he might move up some people's boards. Number 4, Dill, very kind of similar prospect in Chop Robinson, who I have at 4 because I think, as much as we said Adisa Isaac's first step is special, I think Chop Robinson probably is the best first step in the class. I mean, he makes tackles look like they're getting off the ball a second slow. You go back to that Michigan game. Michigan, I mean, largely stopped throwing the football because Carson Barnhart could not block Chop Robinson on the perimeter. And so you look at, those elite traits, that elite get off. I mean, Chop Robinson certainly has that. The cons on Chop Robinson feel like he's a raw pass rusher, kind of like Adisa Isaac, leaning on those elite traits that he has. I don't think he's very physical, like taking on blocks. I think he gets moved off the line of scrimmage if he's not winning with his quickness. Those are some of the concerns I have, is can you play on first and second down if you're not going to be a hammer against the run at the next level?
Yeah, and that's 100% kind of how I see it. Again, it's like when guys can get their hands on him, and that's hard, because you're right. I think arguably got one of the best first steps I've ever seen coming out of college. How quick he gets off the ball is like unbelievable. But if guys get their hands on him, it does feel like at that point he does lose a bit of an advantage. And again, I feel like he should be able to be better with being able to use that and keep guys out of position. And then with that, if they can catch up to him, he should have a move. He should be able to react inside and do some of those things that you see those, I mean, the Von Miller type pass rushers do use that athleticism and put tackles in a really hard position or a really bad position and then work something off of it. I feel like that's where he's got to develop something to work off of that pure speed. Because when he gets right on he can win enough with just beating guys straight up and kind of winning clean, but you do want to see him be able to beat a tackle who is able to get their hands on him.
Chop Robinson is going to be a really interesting prospect because I could see teams in the top 15 saying, I want that kind of juice off the edge. But I could also see a lot of teams saying, I don't even have first round grade on him. And so I think there's going to be a lot of teams that are kind of differentiating in their evaluation. Probably a guy that's going to go a lot earlier than I think some people would expect. And Dill, getting into the top 3, I think this is, in my mind, a separate tier. Right. The first guy we're going to talk about, Jared Verse, top 15 grade on him. And I think there's an argument that I'd make for him being the number 1 player in this class. And he's not as flashy as Chop Robinson, but when you dig into Jared Verse, he's one of the more complete prospects in this class. And it starts with his run defense. He is an absolute hammer playing the run. He's been an absolute hammer. I had a top 10 grade on him last year before he decided to go back to Florida State. I think he added a few tools to his toolkit in terms of being a pass rusher. How he likes to win as a pass rusher, speed to power. This dude has 2 cinder blocks in his hands. He routinely kind of shocks tackles. I think he's really good against the run. And the guy that I think is a little bit more of a disruptor than a stat sheet stuffer, but a guy that you want on your team because he can play all 3 downs. He gives you juice in the pass rush, but also going to be very, very good against the run.
Yeah, I'm with you. The way he uses his hands is so elite. They're lightning quick. He keeps guys from getting on him. And you're right. The one thing you kind of, again, and you're splitting hairs a little bit once you get up to these top 3, because I'm kind of with you. I think these top 3 are all elite. I do wonder if he does have that flexibility. And it's not explosive. Yes, he's explosive as anyone in this draft, I think. But it's that functional athleticism that when you see Latu dip his shoulder under a tackle and kind of be able to bend into him and maintain his strength, I don't know that you see that enough from Jared Verse to maybe put him above those 2. And you could say the same things about Dallas Turner in my mind. But again, probably a better run defender than both of those guys in just terms of how disruptive he is, how good he is at getting tackles hands off him and making tackles. I think that's more important than people give it credit for, is making a lot of run stops, because kind of see those good defenses in college right now. Their defensive lines make a lot of tackles. I think he can be that guy. You just do wonder about that top end flexibility, like what Von Miller is just uniquely. I'm not sure he has that in spades.
That's probably the one knock that you have, as well as its speed probably is a bad, because I think his 10-yard split in the 40 is going to be good. He's very explosive, but that bend is not quite there like it is with a guy like Latu getting us into number 2, Dill. We got Latu Latu, a guy that, the one thing you want to say right off the bat is the medical concerns. He might not be on some boards, and we don't really use medical concerns in our evaluations. We are certainly not doctors. We're not privy to any insider information on medicals, but he was medically retired at Washington. Washington wouldn't clear him to practice and play. Goes to UCLA, has been just an absolute freak. A 26% pass rush win rate. We've been doing this a decent amount, pretty long time. I haven't seen a number like that. This is a guy that wins routinely off the edge and wins with a lot of different things. You talk about polished pass rusher. Latu is one of the more polished pass rushers that we've seen in the last couple of years.
And the big thing with him is going to have all the elite athletic traits. I think, again, we can question physical testing.
Yeah, let's see.
I just can't see it. He's such a smooth mover. And one thing I think him and Dallas Turner do that separates them from everyone else is every move they make is attacking. There's no wasted steps. Everything is going forward. They're getting into tackles. If the tackle gets out wide on them, they can react back inside really quickly using their hands well. They're just such developed pass rushers. I think these top 2, and Verse is really good at what he does, but these top 2 pass rushers, and I think it's really tight. I might have Latu 1 just because he's a little bigger, but I think they're both so uniquely good. They're such elite, developed, pure pass rushers. I think he's the top. I
hope that we don't see Latu drop. Okay, you come to the draft day and you see Latu drop it. If he does drop, I hope it's because of the medical concerns and not because, he didn't test as well as. And we'll see how he tests. You think he's going to test it a little bit better than me, but at the end of the day, he's one of those guys that. Don't forget to watch him when he has pads and a helmet on. That's what you don't want to forget with the guy like Latu Latu. I feel like after they finish up their college careers and then it's just pro days and testing. I feel like people forget how good these guys were on the football field. Laiatu Latu is a guy that you don't want to forget what he's done on the football field the last 2 years, because truly one of the better pure pass rushers, the best pure pass rusher in this class. Now, our number one, and again, you could go back and forth. We got Dallas Turner, and a very similar deal to the conversation about Will Anderson, where it's, is he big enough is he the size? The size is a concern. I mean, people said that about Will Anderson. You didn't play small. I mean, his ability to take on blocks, be a hammer in the run game, that was all there with a guy like Dallas Turner. So, yes, weakness, maybe the number you don't want on the scale, a little undersized, but a guy that is, I think, a hammer and plays much bigger than the weight says, elite first step, has a deep, deep, deep bag of pass rush tools, and I think the number one edge rusher in this class.
And I'm with you. I have honestly no concerns about the size. How you watch that Michigan game, I mean, just the way he puts his, like, uses all the leverage, like perfect leverage. I mean, explodes into guys, knocks them back. I just don't see how the size should be an issue, because it never showed up. He doesn't get pushed around. When tight ends, like, he very easily can just overpower them. I just think how explosive he is, I have no concerns about that. And then you get into, obviously, what makes him and Latu unique in this class in my mind is just, there's like, they have every way you could possibly win to win. I mean, the way he could beat a Will Campbell at LSU, who we think is probably going to be one of those like top 10 tackles next year. He's only a sophomore, but he's coming. I mean, just, you can see how much pressure I think he puts on a guy who isn't really challenged that often in college football. He just has so many ways to win. He's so explosive. He's so athletic and uses his hands well. There's just, you kind of talk that polish, right? It's just, he's so good.
When you have the ability to win with power in your hands, also speed around tackles, like, that's what makes you a true, like, special idea. You know, if a tackle needs to, like, really heavy set you because you got power in your hands, then you're winning with speed. And if a tackle wants to worry about your speed and you just put him right in the backfield, kind of forklift them, that's what makes you special. I think Dallas Turner has all those in kind of the toolkit. Dallas Turner, Laiatu Latu, Jared Verse, any way you want to cut them, I think they're the three top edge rushers in this class. That'll do it for our edge rusher class. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.